It's our best effort to produce something in about half an hour. So you may have to take account of that. But we're going to have David walk us through it, so as to get a sense, if you like, of the logic that we feel underpins this ballot paper. We're not going to have time for any significant discussion on it this evening or in this session. But obviously, if there are comments that people wish to make in the course of the evening, could you make them, maybe particularly to David or Leah or Art or myself? And we depending on those comments, we may end up having a revised version in the morning. But at least this is our first effort to get something down on paper. David.
Okay, so the way we've done it, and they're not numbered correctly, as you'll have noticed immediately, there's 4 sets of questions. So the first question is following the usual logic that we've always adopted, which is the option of voting for status quo or change, which is the way we've always done it. So as a convention, do you want to effectively leave things as they are, or make amendments to the Constitution to strengthen economic, social and cultural rights? That's the first question. So following on from that then, the second question, and this is very much based on some of the discussion we've had this afternoon, is okay, in the event that the convention as a whole votes in favour of reform, does the convention wish to make recommendations now as a convention, or refer it to a task force for further consideration on the implications of possible reforms? So there's a simple binary choice. Do you as a convention wish to make a particular recommendation now, or do you think that it really merits further discussion about the detail by a task force? Then the third question follows on from that, which is, okay, in the event that the convention as a whole wishes to actually make recommendations now, rather than just give it to a task force, here are 4 sets of options based on what we've heard today. And basically this is a sort of gradation. It's a scale from the least the sort of least strong proposals to the strongest proposals. So it goes from, do you just simply update Article 45, setting out the principles of social policy, but effectively don't add in any further enforceability, right, and I'll let Leah in a second sort of clarify this better than I'm doing right now, right down to the bottom option, which is that you insert provisions that economic, social and cultural rights are enforceable, which is the strongest of all reforms. So there's a gradation as you go down those 4 options. And then finally, and least well developed, is what is question 4. In the event that the convention votes in favour of amending the Constitution to strengthen economic, social and cultural rights, are there specific additional rights that should be enumerated? In other words, put into the Constitution? And these are the sort of rights that seem to come up in the discussion, but we could well be missing options, and it's for you from the floor clearly in this instance to suggest other options that could go on the ballot paper under question 4. Maybe, Leah, you should mention a bit about question 3.
Well, I think it speaks for itself, really. It just tries to give you a series of options. As David was saying, they're gradated according to making the rights more and more enforceable. I think it's fairly clear, actually. Just on question 4 there, I've noticed as well the introductory sentence there is a bit unclear. That needs to be revised to reflect the other options further up, but we can change that anyway. Thanks.
Okay. I mean, I'll take 3 comments from the floor if there are 3 comments available. We'll start with Susan, Tom and David.
Thank you. It's just a very brief one in relation to question 3. Would it be the case that I would, for example, if I thought that the last one was the one am I putting 1, 2, 3, 4, or am I just allowed to choose one?
Oh, good question, because that's something you might want to guide us on. We have 2 ways of doing that, which is you get to tick 1 box, or you can rank order them. And we've done both as a convention, so we could have that as you to decide.
Yeah. There could be a logic to rank ordering them. I think it would give a certain sense of preference in the event of people answering this question. Who did I see next? Tom, please.
Thanks, Chairman. Tom Burke. The handout that was given earlier, International Covenant on Economic and Social Rights, I really could lift section 26 and 27 of the South African Constitution and ESCR and usefully put it into our Constitution, and might be an option worth considering. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. David?
Thank you. Just on question 4, we've got healthcare mentioned, but I'd like to see, if possible, specifically emergency medicine, because I think all of healthcare just may be too big an issue to handle, whereas emergency medical is a much more immediate, I suppose, life kind of concept. Like the idea of, I suppose, which has come up in the news recently, of people waiting 40 minutes or an hour and a half for an ambulance. I think that's something we should try to avoid. I think the focus I'd like to see would be on emergency medicine.
Okay, we're going to have limits to the, I mean, that may well be a very valid point, but obviously the level of detail we're going to be able to go in here is restricted. Joan, please. And then Charlie. Or Charlie, or maybe you can go first and then Joan.
Chairman, no, listen, having regard to the complex nature of our deliberations, I feel you've done a good job here. I think it looks fine. It may not be perfect, but if we get into more detail, it may unravel. And I think you've made a very good stab at it here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. Joan?
Thank you. I feel that we could actually do without question 4, because we could ask 100 people in this room and you'll get 100 different items on that list. And that if it was suggested that somebody else would look at this in more depth, let them decide then, what issues they'd want to look at.
Okay, well, I mean, that's obviously a viewpoint. There may be other views. Thomas, please.
It may have been said, but I just think the items in 4 are just so broad, like in terms of what do you actually mean. That the Convention recommends the right to social welfare or right to housing in the Constitution,
Yeah, okay, fair enough. David?
Yeah, I would just have a slight concern about question 2 as well, where it says that we would recommend that it's referred to a task force. Like, what exactly is a task force? Because if we outsource it to the political system again, will we move the issues on? So I'm just wondering, we can't on the one hand say that this has been a good exercise in participatory democracy and that the input from the citizens was good, but all of this has to be teased out further, but there's no role for the citizens. So I think we just need to look at that, because what is a task force? And I just think it would be, it wouldn't do us justice if we were just referred on to some task force that we don't even know what constitutes that task force.
I mean, the core of the logic behind this question is, I suppose, the basic point that as Michael McDougall to some extent made, that, just the time available that we've had to consider these matters has been so short, and the potential implications so significant, that it needs more work before you'd get down to a definitive, and, if you like, recommendation that holds water. Aideen?
Thank you, Chair. It's really, I suppose, boils down to a question of definition. In question 1, the question is, do we, the Constitutional Convention, believe that economic, social and cultural rights should be strengthened? Now, that's economic, social and cultural rights as defined by what exactly? In other words, specifically, what do you mean when you say that? What definition of economic, social and cultural rights are you referring to? Because clearly, if it's a definition of economic, social and cultural rights, as per the UN Convention, for the sake of argument, then I think that's what should be stated, if you know what I mean. Okay. In which case, the Convention itself sets out the areas of rights in it, and there is no need then to list separately the separate areas, because you're automatically referring to the Convention.
Well, possibly, but I mean, there is a basic, as David said, basic starting question, if you like, that we've always had. Do we keep the status quo, which is, in other words, the enumeration of the existing rights in the Constitution, express and implied, or do you go further? I think that's the basic logic behind
No, my
this
question really is about definition, is that it's in relation to question 1.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, if you say in question 1, economic, social and cultural rights, okay, which definition are you referring to?
Okay, well, I will go to Leah for that, but Maureen, and then we're getting close to closing up time.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
I think the general consensus at our table was to keep number 4. I know there are specifics in it, but I don't think it will be any harm that there's a message coming from the Constitution of specific rights that we are interested in furthering and seeing further work on.
Okay, thanks, Maureen. Leah, do you want to particularly that question from Aideen, or that comment from Aideen?
Well, I mean, one option there is we could sort of rephrase question 1 to say, should the Constitution be left as is, or should there be reforms in this area? And I accept your point. There may be varying definitions of ESC rights, but there is a core agreement as to what they are, and there is a fundamental binary choice to be made there. Thanks,
sure.
though. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Terry, may I suggest that question 4, that there is space below the writing for people to add perhaps up to two other items if they wished.
Okay, well, I mean, we're taking on views here. We'll take into that account when maybe the final version. Ivana, I think you're going to have the last word, Ivana.
Well, very briefly, I think you've done a great job given the difficulties of the task. I would have left. I think one is fine. I must say. I would just simply change the wording slightly to say to amend it to say should the Constitution be amended to strengthen the protection of economic, social, and cultural rights. And I think if we keep question 4 there, then it'll be clear as to what the sort of definitions people want of ESC rights are. In terms of 4, I would, like Maureen, I think it's important we would have some indication of the sort of rights people want to see protected, particularly as question 1 is so broad. I like the idea of having a box where we could put in, perhaps where people could put in 1 or 2 more. I don't think that would make it unduly difficult. I would say if we're not going to do that, perhaps we should just have something, one other box on linguistic or cultural rights, which aren't currently included. I think housing, social welfare and healthcare make sense as the 3 obvious basic rights and rights of people with disabilities, but I would say also something on cultural or linguistic rights.
Look, thank you very much for those inputs. I think how we manage this is that we will take account of, and we've heard what you've said, let's say, and we'll come up with an alternative version of this for the morning, if that's okay. Now, the important matter at immediate hand is getting to see the rugby. It's on downstairs in the room, or next, very close in the room. Sorry, could I just have your attention for a minute? In the room where we normally have dinner in the evening. Dinner will start at 7:30. Oh, sorry. At 7:30, dinner's here at 8. Oh, sorry. Reception downstairs at 7:30, dinner at 8 in this room. And I think it is going to be a special evening. So we look forward to seeing you all with your friends. Thank you very much.